It's Tarke here, and because I appreciate your time, I'm not going to make you read. I'm going to give you a very brief TLDR of the patch notes. If you want to see someone read for several hours, I will suggest a few at the end of this. But this is actually a fairly straightforward thing. In fact, to just rate the patch notes, I would give them a decent to like 9. I agree with nearly everything in them. And there are just like one or two slight things that I want to just kind of like clarify that some people kind of got a bit trapped on. The big thing was the Whirling blade and the leap slam changes. A lot of people have asked me exactly what these mean. If you go on Reddit, there are some like breakdowns with graphs and stuff, but very basic TLDR. If you're using a slow weapon with no attack speed roll, so let's just say unique item, most of the time they'll be slightly better now. And then if you're using a very fast weapon with a very high attack speed roll, like a Bright Beak, it's slightly worse. For most builds, it's kind of like a 10 to 15%, like slight buff, slight nerf. The builds will be fine. This is basically just slightly increasing, just normalizing everything a little bit, and increasing the overall options you have when it comes to picking what you want to play, which personally I really like, because there have been plenty of times in the past where I've gone, oh, I really want to use this unique, and it doesn't have an attack speed roll, so I don't use it. The other big thing directly beneath it is Molten Strike. Molten Strike is pretty much fine. They've limited the threshold jewels, so you can only use one, but they've messed with the base damage numbers quite a lot. Again, there's a lot of maths on this on Reddit. Some builds will actually be buffed by this change. Otherwise, you're looking at very minor, like, again, sub 10% nerfs. But keep in mind, you've gained a extra jewel, so an extra DPS jewel or an extra amount of skill points, if you're assuming you're not then using that jewel there. So Molten Strike is fine. Other things which are basically fine that you don't really need to worry about. Divination Distillate. So they've done a big change to how flasks work, and I actually really like it. So all of the max res flasks, what they do now is they just give you like reduction, just like percent reduction. And they don't give max res. This is a massive buff to Lore Weave, so any Lore Weave fans out there, that item just got even better, so that's kind of nice. And what Divination Distillate does now, it no longer provides max res. It just gives you a bunch of all res, but it still gives you all the MF things. And I think that's a good thing. Divination Distillate was originally intended to be an MF item, so if you're an MFer, you'll still use it for that, but you're not going to have a bunch of Pathfinders being really broken with it. So, yeah, I think that's a good change, personally. On the whole, other things which got nerfed that are still kind of fine, in my opinion. Wind Ripper, again, on the MF front, they slightly nerfed the base crit. Well, they basically cut the base crit in half, like 30-40 from 60 to 80 on the roll there. But they upped the flat values, and again, if you're using Wind Ripper, you weren't using Wind Ripper because it was a good damage bow. Like, it's very easy to craft a bow which does more damage than it. You use it because you wanted it for MFing. So if you're an MF bow character, you'd still use this. So in my opinion, I think that's a good thing. I think it's kind of silly when you have these like really insane MF items like Wind Ripper or Divination Distillate. And then they're also extremely strong in terms of raw defense or raw offense. On that note, they also slightly nerfed the Quant on Sedemas, but again, if you're an MFer, it's still good because it still gives you the most you can get in that slot. So I wouldn't worry about that stuff too much. Indigon saw a sizable nerf, but it's still, like, ridiculous that you can get, you know, that much damage on a helm. So while Indigon builds have been nerfed, they were pretty broken, so I think it's fine. Also, Xerthi's Last Breath. Some people are really upset that they nerfed the Flask, but it was a pretty good Flask, and let's be real, I think it's a good thing they're making these changes. Headhunter is still fine, and also what you need to keep in mind is, you know, all of these changes are coming after one league of Delve. I was expecting after Delve to see some quite big changes to, like, immunity builds or super cheese builds, so it really isn't that surprising whatsoever. Also, fun fact, anyone who saw the Bayclast, we called it. Noogie did a very good job. He was like, I think they're really going to do something more. Oh, that's actually a really smart thing. So yeah, Quill Rain now causes you to deal a global 40% less damage. Before it was just weapon damage. So this will affect stuff like Toxic Rain. I actually think this is okay. Core Rain will still be a very good leveling bow for Toxic Rain builds. Toxic Rain's been buffed through a bunch of the new multipliers, which you can find on the passive skill tree and on items, and nearly every build will be buffed in some way by Veiled mods. So you'll still use Core Rain as a good starter weapon, and now if you spend a bunch of exalts trying to craft like a nutty Elder Bow, you're actually going to like equip it and be like, oh, this is an upgrade. You'll still use this for early game, early maps, no problem at all. Toxic Rain is still a perfectly good league star, and it will still be a like easy tier 1 build next league. Don't worry about it. Impulsor saw a very slight nerf, but it's still Impulsor. It's still absolutely fine. But the one item that I really want to talk to you about, and is the standout item of the entire patch, is Duresso's Defiance. I actually really like Duresso's Defiance, and I've used it a few times. I actually used one this league in SSF. And I always liked it because it was a chest which gave you Onslaught, and it gave you Endurance charges, and had a little bit of life. So it used to have 40 to 60 life. It now has 60 to 90 life, which is actually a pretty nice roll. It used to give you Endurance charges for 2 seconds per Endurance charge when hit. Now, 5 seconds. So if you're just a base build with only 3 Endurance charges, you get an Endurance charge every time you kill an enemy, so you always have max Endurance charges. You get hit once, you now have it for 15 seconds. And it has up to 100% increased Onslaught effect, which is, like, insane. This is going to be, like, my de facto, I want to play a fast build. Bye-bye Queen in the Forest. Hi Duresso's Defiance. It's so good. So good. So, even if you already had Onslaught in your build, by equipping this chest, when you have Onslaught, you've gained an additional 20% attack, cast, and movement speed. That's really nice. The fact it's also a hybrid strength and dex item, and it only requires level 62 to equip, the stat requirements on it are fairly easy to, like, color around. So you can use this on, like, any build. It's kind of like, you know how you use Belly on a lot of caster builds? Most caster builds will have, like, 1 or 2 red or green links they want to use. So yeah, you can fit this on anything. I think this is going to be, like, a really sleeper chest, because it's super common. You buy them for, like, an ALK start of League. Just pick these up. These will be really good. Like, just Duresso's Defiance. End video. I think it's really good. Other things just to briefly talk about, but anyone who's hyped about the whole cold damage stuff, they've buffed Vortex very substantially. Vortex now has, I believe, 1.5, yeah. So a level 20 Vortex has basically 1.5k base cold damage per second, up from 680. On the whole cold, like, dot stacking builds, if you wanted to play it, the way I would do it personally, is I would use Cold Snap to map clear, and because all of the Vortex and Cold Snap and shit stacks, you just use Vortex in, like, a 5-link helm for bossing, right? So it's like, you Cold Snap has big AoE, and they also buff the damage quite nicely. It's got 1.2k base at level 20. Cold Snap for map clear, then when you need to single target, Cold Snap plus Vortex. Really nice. I think it's going to be really good. And when it comes to the new Ascendancy changes, which we can show off here, and they have been updated in Path of Building now, so check them out if you haven't already. You can go either Occultist or Trickster for this build. And this node is, like, beyond bonkers. So cannot be chilled, cannot be frozen. A bunch of damage over time multiplier. This is just a massive multiplier. And then every 4 seconds, you have a 33% chance to freeze nearby chilled unique enemies. Pretty good. And then every 4 seconds, you just freeze all nearby chilled enemies. That's, like, insanely insane. And then it's just, like, reduced damage. Some people are kind of upset that it's on another 4-pointer. Yes, if this had been a 2-pointer, that would have been the dream. My only complaint is Occultist is so good that you have to think now. Like, do I want this? Do I want this? Do I want this? I personally think we'll see quite a few life-based Occultists who you go, like, the cold stuff and the curse stuff. Or you could do something where you league... If you wanted to league start as a damage over time Occultist, I would say take the cold 4-pointer and the curse 4-pointer. You'll have really nice map clear between the Cold Snap and the Profane Bloom. And then with all of your curse effectiveness, you know, stacking temp chains on top of chilled ground, on top of Aspect of the Spider because we have Betuary now. And I'm just saying, if I play this build and I still can't get an Aspect of the fucking Spider... Anyway, Aspect of the Spider plus Chill Ground plus Temp Chains is going to be really good. You're going to be freezing everything in a dot build thanks to this. And even when stuff isn't frozen, it's going to be absolutely crawling along. It's going to be absolutely insane. And then once you've invested into your character and you're like, yeah, I want to play this, you can then buy a bunch of fossils. And then you can craft yourself some really nice ES gear. And at that point, you can like decide what you want to drop. The other nice thing about doing the cold node and the curse node early is you get 8 points, which all front load damage. So this gives you, this is the weakest with the minus 20 cold res, but it's still nice. That's just a nice front loading of damage. The reduced life regeneration will actually be fairly strong for some encounters. Some of the Betuary mobs had a lot of regen, so that's kind of nice for like early starter characters. Then this node just gives you everything, defense. They cannot be frozen means start of league, don't need to roll freeze removal flask. Really, really good. You get a bunch of defense through the freezing, a bunch of damage. You get the reduced damage taken, stacked with the reduced damage taken you have in here. So much free starter. Even if it turns out the dot builds aren't good, this will be a good starter build. So yeah, I would say either do it as an occultist or as a tricky fella. And I think it might actually be a half-decent legit build. And for the Toxic Rain people, try and get 1 or 2 of these new multiplier nodes. I'll briefly talk about brand, because the brand stuff is new. There's also some confusion exactly on how brands work. So people see this node and they go, enemies take 10% increased damage for each of your brands attached to them. So they say, okay, so that's like, you add up all of your brands. If you had like 5 brands, that's 50% more damage. No. You can have more brands than you can attach to an enemy. So at base, you can attach 1 brand to an enemy. And then if you take this node, you can attach 2 brands to an enemy. There's probably going to be an item or a like helm enchant, which might push this up to 3. But a base value of just this node and the one you start with, that's 2. This is a global like 20% more damage because, again, enemies take is a more multiplier. So if you're playing in a group, 20% more for the entire group is really nice. Really, really nice. Really, really, really Pogaccini. And then the brand nodes, you have this one here, where you can cast an additional brand. But again, you can cast an additional brand. And this one is you can attach an additional brand. Again, there's a slight difference there. So they're slightly spread out a little bit, because we have 1 in Shadow, 1 in Templar, and then this one is a bit awkward. It's near Scion Life, so you're probably going to get it anyway. But it's a bit of a stretch if you did this as like a Trickster. I still feel like Trickster will be good for this over Hyro, because I feel like if brands are good, you're going to want to just go pure clear speed. So for a Trickster, this isn't a plus brand node. The good ones is this one and this one. So this is just like optional damage. Great if you can get it. But if you're going to skip any cluster, you skip this one, because this is just damage. Whereas that's +1 attached. This is loads of crit if you do crit brands. And this is just a lot of sick damage. So you could easily do like if you did like a ignite-based firebrand dude, then you'd do it as a Trickster. You'd come along this way, grab this node, skip this one because you don't need the crit shit. You're just going to ignite, grab this, skip this. And then if you're doing the Hyro one, then you're probably playing crit, not ignite. And then you're going to want this for the cast additional brand, attach, and the crit one. So yeah, crit, Hyro, ignite, Trickster. That's how I'd recommend those new things. But otherwise, for anyone wanting some very brief kind of like league startery stuff, Herald of Agony is going to be really solid. Soul Rest is going to be solid, and I'm going to make some league starter videos. And finally, the true Glowy Brain patch notes review is actually this 5-hour-long video by Karv. Yes, instead of reviewing the patch notes, I have reviewed all other content creators' patch videos, and Karv is the de facto winner. His is the longest. He also has a very nice description, which is more detailed than the patch notes, explaining everything I just said. So again, if you didn't listen to anything I said in this entire video, watch Karv's video, which will be linked down below. I'm Tarke. Have a good day. Bye-bye.